practised. Then, last of all, a familiar clumsy figure with one red glaring eye, their old enemy, the warming pan. As Rudolf was trying to take in these and many others in that curious throng, he felt himself sharply pinched by Ann. "Look, look!" she whispered. "Over there where it's so dark, close to Peter. Oh, don't you know now who their boss is?" Rudolf looked. Clearly enough now he saw two flaming green eyes and a clumsy black figure crouching on the ground. Before this figure every one of the dancers made a low bow as he passed. "Don't you know him?" repeated Ann, shivering with excitement. "It's Man-under-the-bed." "Oh, well, what if it is?" whispered Rudolf. "I stopped bothering about him years ago. He's only for babies." Ann was not deceived by Rudolf's cheerful tone. Man-under-the-bed might not amount to much at home, with nurse and mother to frighten him away, but here, in his own country, it was not pleasant to meet him. "He's horrid," said she. "Oh, look, Ruddy, what is he doing now?" Man-under-the-bed had stretched out a long black arm and pointed to the fire. Instantly the Bad Dreams stopped their dance and vanished into the darkness. When they came again into the firelight, the children saw that the cook, the dancing master, and several others carried large dishes in their hands, which they now presented with low bows to Peter. "It's the banquet," whispered the Knight mare nervously. "If he touches a morsel, he's lost. He'll go to sleep and dream bad dreams for ever and a day, which won't be pleasant, I assure you." Ann and Rudolf had not waited for the Knight mare to finish his speech. They rushed on Peter just as he had helped himself to an enormous slice of mince pie, and while Ann threw her arms about his neck, Rudolf snatched the tempting morsel out of his hand and cast it in the fire. Of course Peter struggled and fussed and was not a bit grateful, but Rudolf and Ann did not care, for the Knight mare's warning rang in their ears. Meanwhile the Bad Dreams had gathered round the children in an angry circle, and Man-under-the-bed growled out, "Seize 'em, some of you! Where's that fat policeman?" "Here, sir." Very much against his will the policeman had been pushed forward till he stood in front of the children, hanging his head and looking very uncomfortable. "Arrest them, why don't you?" shouted the boss. "Please, sir, I have," muttered the policeman humbly, shifting from one foot to the other and looking more and more unhappy. "Then do it all over again, and be quick about it, or—" Man-under-the-bed made a terrible face at the policeman, who shivered, and edging up to Rudolf laid a timid hand on his shoulder. "No, you don't!" cried Rudolf. "I'm not afraid of you!" And he gave the policeman a poke with his sword, just a little one, about where his belt came. The policeman gave a frightened yell, doubled up as if he had been shot, and ducking under the shoulders of the crowd made off into the darkness. Man-under-the-bed was furious. The children heard him roar out a command, and then the Bad Dreams advanced on them in a body. The leaping, dancing flames of the plum-pudding fire showed their angry faces and strange figures. Rudolf was not really afraid now, for he saw at once that the Bad Dreams were not much at fighting. Yet there were so many of them that by sheer force of their numbers they were slowly but surely pushing the three children back, until they were crowded against the trunk of the great oak tree where Man-under-the-bed had been crouching. He had run to fetch a great branch of burning holly from the fire, and holding this like a torch above his head, he pressed through the crowd toward Rudolf and dashed it almost into his eyes. Rudolf shrank back, half blinded by the glare, and bumped sharply into Peter, who in turn was pushed violently against Ann, who had set her back firmly against the tree trunk. The tree, as she described it afterward, seemed to give way behind her, and she fell backward into soft, smothery darkness. Peter fell after her, and Rudolf on top of Peter. The little door which had opened to receive them snapped to again as if by magic, and from the other side of it the triumphant howls of the Bad Dreams came very faintly to their ears. End of chapter 13.